Hey there everybody, it's Tara with Healing Adventures. Welcome to my channel and thanks for stopping by. Here at Healing Adventures, we inspire, motivate, and activate your truth, your passion, and your mission on this planet. So today in this video, we're going to actually be having an interview with one of the ordinary people living an extraordinary life. Her name is Krista Jack. She is an amazing mother of two. She's a scientist. She also has a thriving hypnosis practice here in Austin, Texas called ATX Hypnosis and Wellness. And so I wanted to meet with her today because she's just one of these extraordinary people, really, who has created a life that she really, truly loves. And we're going to talk about conscious parenting. So with conscious parenting, it is a different paradigm. It is time to no longer do some of the things that we maybe were taught to do and really open our hearts and our minds and our souls to what do these children need? Who do they need us to be? How do we go about doing that? So some of the things we'll be talking about in this video is what does it take to keep everything in balance? Really, what does it take to take on being a conscious parent, balancing career, balancing yourself and who you are, not losing your identity, balancing your children and all of the structures and the day-to-day living that we have. We also go over the difference between parenting today and parenting yesterday. There is a difference, and it's as if these children are truly calling us forward to be into a new space of being. So we go over that today as well, among many other things that we talk about. We also go over the awareness of understanding what is it that our children need versus what they want. So those are just a few of the topics that we'll discuss today, and I so hope you enjoy this interview. We had a blast making it, so now stay tuned for Krista Jack. Really, I just want to talk to you today because as those of you who have been here before, if you're new to this channel, definitely subscribe. It'll make a difference. Also hit the like button, and if you like what we talk about today, be sure to share the video. But today I really want to hand it over to you and just talk about conscious parenting. And also, that's what I was going to say, because a lot of what this interview process is about me speaking with ordinary people living extraordinary lives, and really to support those of us who are watching and inspiring us, motivating us, and activating us to get into action around thoughts or ideas that pop into our mind. It's really about living your passion in this world. So let's talk about conscious parenting.
Let's do it. Love it.
So, well, I just want to say thank you for being here today.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
Seriously.
I always love talking to you.
And it's fun.
It's such a joy being with you.
It's fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, I'll just start off, there's a lot that I think is just so amazing about who you are. So who you are is you are this mother. You've created a world and a life for your children. You're a single mother. You have a very successful hypnotherapy practice. You have continued to have a successful career in the area of your science background and being a scientist. How do you do all that? How do you do all that?
Question.
Because it takes something. I think in the world, as most of us know, we get caught up in, I don't want to say, I hear the word mundane, but it's not mundane, but we get caught up in the day-to-day pressures of this is what I have to do. This is the structure I have to follow. I have to get the kids to school. I have to put food on the table. I have to pay the bills. I have to get myself ready. I have to, we have all these things we have to do. And I think many people, even many parents, we tend to put ourselves on the back burner. And we say, well, I've got to live my life for this child, and then I've got to live my life for my job because my job is what enables me to actually support my children, and there's no space for me. And then we also make these excuses of, there's no time for me. I don't have time to work out, or I don't have time to meditate. I don't have time to do these things that would literally take care of yourself. So, and I look at you, and you're just, always glowing, always radiant. And I wonder, how do you do it all? How do you take on that life and really juggle and manage all of it and have it look so easy. I think that's the key.
Right?
Have it look so easy. Yeah.
Well, thank you for saying that. It's very sweet of you. I will tell you, first and foremost, I don't do it all. I don't. There are things that I miss, that I mess up on, and my life has not been a straight and narrow trajectory. There's been a lot of figuring things out as I go, a lot of failures, quote unquote failures, and learning from those. And so it hasn't been a straight path of just climbing up and getting everything right the first time.
Right.
I think one of the biggest things that I had to learn was it's really not about the doing, it's about the being. And I know that's very cliche and everybody talks about that, but it really is true.
Yeah.
And you know,
about
kids,
the being.
It is about the being. Yeah. And kids are a fantastic mirror to let you know when you're not being.
Yes. Yes. Say more about that.
So, yeah. So, when my kids were younger, my kids are now 13 and 9. I noticed that when I was really off, when I was highly anxious or stressed or not present at all, I would immediately see changes in them. That they would act out more, or they would have difficulties. They wouldn't sleep well. They would get sick more. My kids used to get sick a lot. And,
yeah, interesting.
And I noticed there was a high correlation when I wasn't taking care of myself.
So, you know, and I just want to bring up, you know, that's a key point. You recognizing that you're not taking care of yourself. Sorry, there's a truck going by.
There's a truck. Big truck.
But you recognizing, how did you even recognize that? Because I think so often, people aren't even aware because they're just so caught up in that mind frame of doing. They're not even aware that there's something within them that's impacting the children in acting out.
Right.
Do you know what that was for you?
Well, yeah, unfortunately it was trauma, right? Or things falling apart, which I think is a natural human tendency. We don't necessarily reflect until we're in some kind of trauma state or something goes wrong. Now, I've heard other people say, and I absolutely believe, we don't have to change initiated from trauma. We can change initiated from joy, from love, from just wanting a better life for ourselves and the people we love and everybody on this planet.
However, we often wait till there's a trauma.
Well, and that's the old paradigm, right? We wait for the trauma.
Yes.
And so for me, that happened when my kids were younger. My son has learning disabilities and is on the spectrum. And so when I started to piece, and he has medical issues on top of that. So as things were getting more chaotic with him, and my marriage wasn't doing well, I realized, okay, something's got to change. And I tried doing all the external things to fix it. I tried being the best mom I could, and the best friend, and the best daughter, and the best worker. And that made headway. I was changing matter. But I realized with help of friends and reading books and just a lot of internal reflection, if I wasn't changing the energy that was going on inside of my heart and my head, nothing stuck. If that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. Changing the energy within your heart and your head.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So unfortunately I learned the hard way, but it's been a progression now that my kids are a little older. So I have a teenager and a 9-year-old. They give me feedback now. So if they notice I'm a little off or I haven't taken care of myself, and not that they exactly know what that is, but they'll come up to me and say, "Mom, you seem a little off, or you seem a little tired." And they'll tell me, they're like, you need to go meditate. Or my son says, you need to go omatize.
Love that. Omatize.
That's what he calls me when I meditate. So they give me feedback now because they know.
I just love that they're aware to even know that there's something off with you, so that they're actually in support of her going and getting, whatever it is you need, so that you can come back and be with them, which I love.
Well, they've seen me on both ends of the spectrum.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So they know.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, I mean, I have a very busy life, but I noticed once I started taking care of myself internally more, I had more energy. I had more energy. That was the bottom line. And I realized how much energy I was consuming through worry, through fear, through anxiety, through depression, through just daily chronic stress. It was eating my energy reserves so that I didn't have energy and vitality to do what I needed to do.
I love that. Eating your energy reserves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just completely draining you. What are some of the things that you do to help, and this might help some of you, you know, what are some of the things that you do to help balance you?
I do meditate every day. And when I first started meditating years ago, I didn't enjoy meditating. Now I love it. And so if I can get an hour of meditation every day, that's nirvana for me. But sometimes I only have time for 5 or 10 minutes.
Yes.
And those 5 or 10 minutes, even so, will make a difference.
Yes. Have you ever experienced going through phases where you just didn't even have the bandwidth or the, what's the word, motivation to meditate?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even now there's still days or weeks where I don't feel like it.
Yeah.
You know, I find excuses. My monkey mind finds a reason not to. Oh, well, I have to, you know, load the dishwasher.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm serious, right? Load the dishwasher.
Right. The simple things in life that we have to do. Yes. Yeah.
So I find an excuse, and then I just say, well, that's okay. I can have that excuse. I can also go spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and take that time for myself.
Yeah, and I bring that up because I think a lot of people will talk about meditating. Well, I can't do that. You know, if you're chopping vegetables, making dinner, just quietly chopping vegetables, you're meditating. So it's about finding, even if it's just for 10 seconds of centering, like when you talked about the mind and the heart, just for 10 seconds of just centering, taking that breath. You have the space to find it. You can do it. You can make it happen. And I have found, and I don't know your thoughts on this, but if you just, I don't want to say force yourself, but if you just make the conscious choice to do that, you will begin to see that pattern of wanting to do it more and the craving, because you'll begin to see the actual results of what it's doing, because it is calming your mind and it is bringing you back to center. So, yeah.
Yeah, and actually I love what you said about chopping vegetables. So we do spend several hours a day in an alpha brain state when we're awake.
Yes.
So if you're driving a car and you get from point A to point B and you don't remember the trip, or you're chopping vegetables, or you're doing something like that, you're naturally going into an alpha brain state, which is a brain frequency that can be associated with light meditation or hypnosis. And so we naturally go into those states, so you might as well go into that consciously. So if you're gonna chop vegetables, put on some music that's relaxing and just allow yourself to decompress, allow yourself to center while you're doing that.
I love it.
It's a natural thing that we do anyway.
I love it. It is. It's a natural thing, people. Do it. So I want to talk a little bit more about conscious parenting. I know we were having an interesting conversation just about this new dynamic of children and what it means to parent today. So earlier we were talking about it's, you know, the children that we have now, children that are coming in, and I guess we could say the children over the last 20, 30 years coming in, really, and we're part of that community as well. They require a different type of parenting, especially these little people that are coming in the last 10 to 15 years. It's very different. And we were talking about, as very holistic people that we see ourselves as, that we're even having to find that boundary or happy medium of how do you raise a conscious child inside of the world that we're living in, outside of the old paradigm or outside of the old constructs of what we thought it meant to raise a conscious child. So yeah, let's talk about that a little bit.
I have a scientific background. I'm a scientist, and yet also I was raised in a household that was also very spiritual for the time. So I kind of had these ideas of what it would be like to raise my own children with those two elements in the household.
Right.
And it's been very different than what I thought it would be.
Yes.
So we were
And
talking.
why? I think it's great to point out. I want to point out why. Why has it been very different?
Yeah, I kind of had a preconceived idea of what it meant to be a spiritual or conscious parent and what I needed to do for them and expose them to, and what events we should go to, and what techniques they should learn. This wasn't something that I sat down and wrote in a notebook, but I kind of had it rolling
Just
around
had an
in
idea.
I had it rolling around in my head. And, you know, I grew up in a household where I was meditating and I was exposed to scientists and also to psychic mediums. So I thought that was very normal. And then I over the years, I've taken my kids to different events, or I've said, okay, sit down and let's meditate together. And they'll say to me, oh, well, Mom, that's what you do. That's not what I do. And so it's been interesting to see how I'm honoring where they're at and that they want to differentiate from me at certain points in time.
Yes.
And then on the other hand, they'll come home from school or they'll wake up from the night and tell me about an out-of-body experience they had, or how they knew something before it happened, or they knew the answers to a test, whatever it was. So they're obviously connected. They're highly empathic. They have a great deal of care for other creatures, other people.
Yes.
But how they're choosing to manifest that is in a very different way than how I've chosen to manifest that for my life.
Right.
And so it's really challenged me to say, okay, just honor how they're choosing to express themselves and their consciousness.
Yeah. And really, I even sense the letting go, and trusting that even though we're not implementing that structure, you're not implementing the structure that you thought would be the way to bring them up, knowing that they're still going to turn out, I guess would be the word. I hate to use the word turn out, but that's always something I worry about. Is my son going to turn out? Is he going to be okay? You know, but they are. They really are. And it's different. It's different than when we were growing up. And, you know, I want to add something, you know, to what you were saying, is that children can be heard now. You know, 30, 40, 50 years ago. I can only speak for almost 50 of those years. But we were to be seen and not heard for years. You really didn't have a voice until you became some adolescent teenager and you were like, screw you, I'm doing it my way. As to where today, we have given them a voice the moment they walk out. The moment they come out of the womb, we have provided them a voice. And as a result, which I think is beautiful, but how do I say this? Children have become more profound in how they respond and react to some of our parenting. Like, they have an opinion about it, and they're going to let us know that doesn't work. That doesn't work, Mom. That doesn't work for me. And it's in those moments when we have to take a step back and say, wow, because it's not working. It's not working, you know? And it's like you were saying earlier, you know, they are really calling us forth to be better parents, to be, I don't want to say better parents, I want to say different parents. Different. It's a different time. And it's as if they're calling us to be their equal. I don't know your thoughts on that. But.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think about often that my kids are calling me forth to be more authentic.
Yes, I love that.
On a daily basis.
Yeah. Yes.
And
because it's like removing all the masks that we think we have to have on as parents as well. Well, I'm supposed to be this way so that you see me this way, instead of being your authentic self.
Yeah. And, you know, my kids and other kids that I know in their generation, they see right through the masks.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And I remember being a kid and looking at adults, and I didn't have the term mask, but I remember thinking that? Why are they doing that? That's not who they really are. And kids now, like you said, have that voice and that ability to speak up.
Yeah.
And there are times where I'll talk to my kids about how things were when I was growing up, and they'll say, well, Mom, you know, you grew up in the 70s and 80s. And they'll just kind of, you know.
My son says the 1900s. That was in the 1900s. I'm like, oh my God. 1900s weren't that long ago, honey.
I know. Yeah.
I
think
love that.
My favorite one was when my son said to me a couple of years ago, he said, Mom, what was it like to see the dinosaurs when they were alive? Well, I'm not quite that old.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Right.
I guess I age well.
Yeah, you have. You look amazing for 1,000,000 years old.
Thank you. But, yeah, I really do think that they're calling us forth to be more authentic.
Authentic.
And that is one thing that I do question myself a lot on is, am I being authentic? Am I meeting them for where they are right now and for what they need? And what they need is different than what they want, right? So balancing that role of knowing that on that higher level, on that soul level, that we're all equal, and yet I still have a role to play as their parent.
Yes.
In terms of setting boundaries, in terms of guiding them, in terms of being fully present for them as much as I can, and when I can't, not beating myself up about that, which is a balance.
What do you think it is that they really want, in your perspective?
From my perspective,
Yeah.
most of the time they want me to be present. You know, if when I'm present with them, they just come alive.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is one of the biggest gifts you can give anybody.
Yes.
You know when somebody's present with you.
Yes.
And you also know when they're not.
Yes.
Somebody can be looking right in your eyes and talking to you, and they're a million miles away. You feel that.
Yes.
And so kids have that innate ability to know when you're present with them. And I do think that that's one of the trappings of our society right now, with all the devices and all the technology. As parents,
really
as well as kids, and all the demands, you know, they're pulling us in a lot of different ways. And so to be present with your children, I think, is one of the greatest gifts, but one of the greatest challenges right now.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about that. What's your take on that with your kids, and how do you balance that whole world of the device, especially you have a teenager, which the devices become even more so?
Right. That's a good question. It's still a work in progress. And my two kids are very different. So my teenage daughter, she's been able to understand from a young age that balance, that healthy balance of screen time versus non-screen time. And she was at camp for 3 weeks this summer, completely unplugged.
That was nice.
And that was really good. And she didn't miss her devices at all. And so she's somebody that I feel like, you know, I give her a certain amount of time. And once she's done with that time, she's fine. And she can move on, and she can reground herself in other ways. Have that downtime, outdoor time with friends. She doesn't have device withdrawal. My son is very different. He's a boy. He also is on the spectrum, and he has a lot of struggles socially and academically. And so for him, the screen time, we've had many conversations about it. For him, that screen time is for a way for him to recharge and to think of other worlds and other possibilities. He learns through watching YouTube videos. He learns about chemistry. He learns about science. He learns about history. He learns all these things. He also plays games. So it's a different way that he feels. From what he's told me, I feel safe, I feel comfortable.
Isn't that interesting?
And so for him, it's been more of a struggle for me to see, okay, that's important, and yet it's also important to be off the screen time because of all the known issues with dopamine receptors and all of that.
Absolutely.
So
I see it with myself.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like, just put the phone down. That whole dopamine receptor and like needing to find that instant gratification.
Right.
So it's interesting.
And I guess with him, the biggest thing that I've found is when I need him to get off, when it's time for him to get off, if I just call from another room because I'm in the middle of a work project or I'm in the middle of making dinner and I call for him to get off, but I don't actually go help redirect him to something else and sit him down, it's a struggle.
Yes.
If I go in and say, okay, buddy, now we need to get off, and I help transition him to another activity, and I'm present with him, it goes much more smoothly.
For that transition time.
For that transition, which, you know, is again, I'm juggling other things, but at least for me and for my son, that's what I've found. I need to help him physically be present to help him transition.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I don't know if you're familiar with Allison Armstrong's work.
No.
She does these great programs on men and women, but one of the things that the man's brain has is it needs transition time, as to where a woman does not. And men need to transition between every single thing they do, whether it's getting from the car to the front door. To the front door, they pull out everything out of their pockets. That's a transition time. Then from when the time that they come into the house, it's like all these transitions. So it's interesting that you bring that up, because that's actually a part of what's needed on the male's brain, is that transition time. And also, when you bring that up, I've seen that with my own son, with the screen time, is that transitioning. Like if I say, okay, you've got 10 more minutes, and then it's time to do this other thing, there's a lot less meltdown than if I just come in and be like, turn off the iPad. There's a big meltdown. It's as if I have to prepare him for those moments and those shifts. And then he's willing, especially if I've given him enough time. He's willing, like, okay, see, I turned it off. So it's interesting. But I love that your daughter just has her own self-regulation, I guess would be, amongst all of her things. Outdoor, friends, all of it, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, they're very different.
Yeah.
Very different kids.
Yeah. I want to learn from you, how do you bring forth you into your life such that you're able to balance it and make it work? Because there's a big complaint, especially with women, and I don't want to target women, but there is this complaint that, well, you can do that, I can't. You're able to handle that, I can't. You're able to do what you love, I can't. And I say, yes, you can. But it takes a conscious choice to want to fulfill. I don't know if you're grasping what I'm saying. I want, especially women, I want women to know that you don't have to drive yourself into the ground. You don't have to, your life isn't about just living for your child and then living to go to that job that you have. That is not, your life doesn't have to be that. Your life literally can be created by you, and you get to say. So given that you're someone who has created a life that you love, I think, you love your life. You've created a career that you love. You've found a way to balance a career that you were in for 13 plus years, and you're moving it into another direction, which you're then opening it into this other realm. And you still balance the ability of raising healthy children with, we have our highs and our lows and our good days and our bad days. But how have you managed that? What have you done for you? And what did it take for you to get up and say, I'm not going to be the victim to my circumstances. I'm actually going to create an incredible life. And it's going to take something. You don't just get out of bed and it's like, oh, today it's easy. It's, it takes something to manage and juggle it all, but it's possible. And you won't be exhausted. You'll actually be more fulfilled. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It does. And I will tell you, for years, quietly in my head, I was one of those people who said, oh, they can do it, but I can't. And I had a list of reasons why I couldn't, right? And they included my own health and, it doesn't matter. There was a list. And then I came to this point where I started doing more meditation. I started doing more introspection. And I realized I didn't want to perpetuate this mindset anymore. It wasn't sustainable. It wasn't creating the future that I wanted to create.
And where was your life at that time? What did life look like for you at that time versus how it looks today?
You mean externally?
Yeah, just like, how did you see your life? Like, did you wake up and you're like, oh, today's a great day? Or you woke up and you're like, shit, it's another effing day?
Yeah, more of the latter. Yeah, it was actually when I was going through my divorce, and I was trying to hold everything together, and everything was falling apart. And I came to this point where I realized I don't know really who I am, but I just know that I want to create my life. I want to fall in love with myself. I want to fall in love with my life, and I want to have a life that I absolutely love. And I have no idea how to get there, but I'm going to figure it out. And so it took that moment of just brutal honesty of saying, okay, I can't pretend anymore that I'm doing all of this, because I'm not.
Right.
It's all falling apart.
Right.
And I started to deconstruct.
And who were you pretending for? For you? For others? Who were you pretending for?
Yeah.
You thought your kids?
Yeah,
Who was
everybody.
it? Everybody.
Everybody. The funny thing is, of course, everybody could see through it.
Yeah.
Right?
But we don't think so.
Right?
Got it together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everyone's like, poor thing.
No, you really don't. Sorry, honey. Yeah, so it was all falling apart, and I realized I was so highly identified with my roles as a mother, as a coworker, as a daughter, as a sister, as, all of these roles.
Yes.
That I had really lost sight of who I was, and I really didn't know who I was. So as I started to realize, okay, I'm not all of these roles, I need to play these roles, right? I need to take care of the tasks that need to be taken care of. But who I really thought I was, I realized I needed to figure that out. And so it was really a journey of going inside of myself and saying, okay, how do I really think? How do I really feel? We have anywhere between 40 to 60,000 thoughts a day, and most of those are negative. And so when I realized that, I was like, I can't keep living like this. So it was a process through different techniques of reprogramming myself and starting to say, okay, what do I want to think? What do I want to believe? What do I want to feel about myself and my life?
I love that. What do I want to feel? What do I want to feel?
Yeah, because most of us, we're doing things for a feeling.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We want to feel certain ways.
Yes.
And so I wasn't feeling anywhere near where I thought I could be feeling. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And what would you say to a man or a woman who was really struggling inside of their life, that every day they woke up, it just looked grim and bleak? What would you say to them?
That you are way more powerful than you think. So I think we become conditioned to certain ways of being, certain ways of thinking and feeling, and we think that's who we are. That's absolutely not who we are. And there's so much information out there. There's so many resources, techniques that are available to the mass public now.
I mean, you do that. You help reprogram and repattern people.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's only one way.
Yeah.
There's so
multitude
many
of ways.
Yes. And they're simple, easy ways. And if you just take a couple of minutes every day and start reprogramming yourself, start figuring out who you want to be instead, even if you don't know what that would feel like, write it down, figure out where you're at now and where you want to be. And there are so many resources out there, and take those little steps so that it doesn't seem overwhelming, especially if you have a busy life.
Yes.
That it's absolutely possible. And it's a time in the world now where so many people are waking up and doing this, that collective energy of all of us doing our own little parts, it's building. It's a wave that's building on itself.
Yeah.
So much easier to do it now than even 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Which is beautiful.
Yeah.
No, it's beautiful. And it is. I think it's as she says, it's recognizing and realizing you are so much more than that thought that's running through your mind.
Yeah, there's one of my favorite authors and speakers, Joe Dispenza. He said one of his greatest revelations years ago was that he realized he didn't have to believe every thought that he had. And when he said that, it struck me.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, if I think this, that doesn't mean it's real.
Yeah.
I don't have to believe it.
No. And it's a practice. It's a journey. Because then you also have to look at, one tool is looking at, where does this even come from? Where does this thought even come from? You know, I was running, I was jogging this morning, and heard, "You still think you're not enough." And I thought, okay, I still think I'm not enough, you know? And so then I started asking my body, well, where is this located? And then it was, you know, at the parts that you're not recognizing. Well, what are those parts that I'm not recognizing? And it really just drove down to another level of body image that I had to then move through that track and get that it's not real. But there is some layer, some aspect, and as you know, we go back to our childhood, we go back to this time, we go back to that time. And sometimes it can be past life brought through. But again, it is just getting down to those core sentences, but recognizing that they're not who you are. They're simply a tape, a track that you can delete, that you can erase.
Yeah.
That's why we have cassette recorders. We could erase those and re-record, remember?
Right?
Back in the day.
Exactly.
But yeah, that's powerful. So yeah, I just really wanted to know, you know, what has it taken for you? You know, and what would your children say? What do you think your children would say today?
Well,
what it's taken for you?
Yeah, you know, I've actually had conversations with them about this, and they have said to me, point blank, they said, "Mom, you're much happier now than you were just a couple of years ago, 5 years ago."
Wow.
And when I asked them, well, what do you think has changed? What have you seen that's changed? And they, you know, they, in their own words, say that I seem more present, and that I seem more relaxed, and that I seem to take more time to be there with them. And, you know, along that path, there were certain things that I did have to let go of. You know, there were obligations, external obligations, that I decided there's only 24 hours in the day, so I'm going to have to cut some of these things out.
Right.
And where are my priorities? I really had to sit down and realize that part of me wanted to keep those obligations because of a program, right? Because it's who I thought I should be as a person in society, or a mother, or whatever.
Right.
And I had to make a conscious choice. Which do I choose for now?
Right.
Knowing I can always change.
Right.
But yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Going back to the kid part and the parenting part, as I've been on this journey, one of the things that I realized was that I had this idea in my mind that as a parent, I needed to be somewhat removed from my child, right? And teach them certain things, and say, okay, this is what we're going to do now, and this is what we're going to do now. And in my mind, because I grew up in a very traditional part of the country, in a very traditional family, in very, very traditional schooling, and then I had my kids, and everything changed. And so I realized, as I've been on this journey of self-discovery, all the techniques and tools that I've been learning, whether it's different types of meditation, or tapping, EFT, or heart-brain coherence techniques, or, you know, whatever it is that I just sit down with my kids and I teach them, and I try them on them, and I have them learn the techniques. And sometimes they adopt them, sometimes they don't. And I think it's that kind of just face-to-face sharing that the world needs more of, right? Because
face-to-face sharing, I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people and met people on airplanes, or I've met people in random spots, and we'll strike up a conversation, and you'll find that connection, and maybe they're in need of help just in that moment, and you can light a little spark in them and share something with them. It doesn't have to be huge, but you don't know the effect that that's going to have on their life, and when they go home, on their families and their friends. It can be huge. And if
life-altering, honestly.
Yeah, and if we all do that, if we all share that with each other, rather than trying to protect knowledge or keep it, or worry about what somebody's going to think of you if you share something, that's how we connect. And that's what all humans want. We want to connect. We want to belong.
Goes back to authenticity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't, you know, as we sit here and talk about all this, we've never been an authentic society.
Not that we can remember.
No. I mean, we're just entering this world of authenticity. And it brings up this thought of that's what these kids are teaching us to be, like you said. That's really, it's just about getting real and raw with who you are. And, you know, I love when you talked about, you know, the ways of being, you know. So many of us, we think, okay, so if I'm a parent, this is what I have to do to be a parent. And if I'm an employee, this is what I have to be an employee. If I'm a manager, this is how I have to be a manager. You know, just be you. Just be you. Bring your light to all those areas. But that's like the new journey. Like how do I even do that? What does that mean to bring my light to all these areas and just be myself? You know, it's funny, as I dance back and forth in this corporate space, you know, moving back into the corporate arena, as I bridge all of this, I had a big coming to Jesus with myself that I can't do it the way I did it before. I can't go in and bullshit and try and sell the beebles and the baubles. I just like, this is who I am. This is who you're getting. And this is why you want to buy my product. You know, it's like, because I'm real and authentic, and I'm not going to come here and just, you know, shake and shimmy and do the thing. We're better. Because at the end of the day, you know, what they've got is good. What we've got is good. It's really what I'm going to bring to you in terms of service.
Right.
That really will probably be the only difference. They can probably do everything that my company can do.
Right.
But it's that dance of how do you be authentic? And then when you are in front of people who aren't authentic yet, but you're standing there wanting to be authentic, but they're still wanting you to bring that track. They're still expecting, well, hey, I'm expecting you to just walk in the door and do this because you're that. You know, and it's, I don't know. So I think I'm getting a little off track, but.
Well, no, I mean, then if you're authentic, it gives them the opportunity to be more authentic.
To let their guard down.
Or to not. They have that choice.
Right.
Right? But I think when you see somebody who's authentic, when you're with somebody who's authentic, we're all inspired when we see somebody who's passionate about whatever they're passionate about, whatever it is that really lights them up and makes them feel alive. That's contagious. You love being around anybody who's passionate. It doesn't matter if they're passionate about this or that.
A stick or a stone.
Right. And you can only be passionate really when you're authentic.
Right.
You can tell when somebody's faking that passion and when somebody's truly passionate. And so
I just love that we're stepping into that space now. It's beautiful.
It is.
You know, where people can just be people can just be themselves and just be open. And you see more of it. You see people smiling more. You see people being more helpful, being more open. And it's nice. It's refreshing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we were talking about, you know, conscious parenting, and we've woven in a few different things. You know, it's how do you be authentic in your world? How do you bring inspiration to what it is you want to do while trying to juggle your life and all of these things that you have to do? But one of the pieces that we were just talking about in terms of conscious parenting was when we're looking at our children, and, you know, I said it earlier about, you know, hope he turns out. I want him to turn out. You know, how do we allow them to move in whichever direction? And I guess, you know, maybe you're going to say it in a better way. I don't think I'm saying it very well, but, you know, how do we guide and direct them? And then when they do make the choices that they make, how do we just allow and let go? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Because, and I'll bring this up. I always hear, and I just heard this the other day in my training with this company that I'm with, is, you know, if a child goes to college, they must go to college. If they go to college, then they're going to have opportunity. I don't necessarily agree with that. We have plenty of proof that that's not the case, but there's still those thoughts. So I'll just leave it there and go ahead and let you pick it up.
Yeah, so actually, it's interesting you say that. I was with my father recently. This is a little sidebar, but I'll weave it back in. I was with my father recently, and he's had extensive brain damage from 7 major strokes and now Alzheimer's. And so his filters are all gone. And so he's just saying things that are coming out of his mouth that's just pure programming. And it's heartbreaking and also fascinating at the same time. And I was taking care of him the other day, and he was saying, everybody says, once you get that MD after your name, that everything is easy and your life is fulfilled and you'll be happy for the rest of your life. And he said, it's just not true. And he's an MD. And so it was so blatant programming that he was just saying out loud of our society still has ingrained, you need to have letters after your name, or you need to go to college, and absolutely those opportunities open certain doors for you. There's no doubt about that.
Exactly.
But now with the world the way it is, we see people being successful in all arenas.
Yes.
And so I think for me, growing up in a traditional family in a traditional part of the country, it's been very interesting for me to kind of question that in myself and say, how best can I prepare my children for the world, for what they need, and understanding that I don't consciously know what they need, right?
I love that, yeah.
But how can I best prepare them to be the greatest version of themselves?
Right.
And to know when they start taking their life in one way that they can redirect it to another way. Give them those tools that I've learned as an adult early on, so that they can course correct, rather than seeing they have to fit into a specific paradigm.
Yes, yeah. And I think in terms of that, allowing them to really find that for themselves, because they know it. They know it when they're little. They know exactly who they want to be. And it's almost for us to be aware and to be awake enough to capture that, and then to hopefully steer them in that direction. They know who they want to be.
Right.
And they can change their mind.
Right.
But you can see it in the things that they're fascinated by, the things that are their favorite things to do. Whatever it is, if they love to paint, if they love to do math, whatever it is, you see it. And it's almost, rather than, and I think we grew up in such a time where it was like, well, you should be a doctor, or a lawyer, or a dentist. I mean, I don't know, a veterinarian, because that's what will make you money. It wasn't about, what is it that you love to do and you want to be? It was never about that. But we see this now. We see this happening. And they're telling you who they want to be.
Absolutely. And I think, at least for my kids, one of my goals is to keep that internal motivation in them alive. So
love that, internal motivation, keeping it alive.
Yeah. So whatever their passion is or their interest, encouraging them through my actions and also through conversations to keep feeding that. Because with our society or school, both my kids go to public school, traditional public school, social media, there's so many pressures on kids nowadays to that can whittle away at that internal motivation.
Yes.
And that internal motivation is critical for them,
Yes.
for all of us.
Yes.
To keep moving forward in life and keep pursuing what it is that we want to do, as well as who do we want to continually evolve to become. And so feeding that has been really important for me, to help feed that in them. And I can only do that in them to the extent that I, in bits and pieces, do it for myself.
Right? Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's you've got to be doing it for yourself. Because they're still watching us. They still are learning from us every day. And if we're telling them one thing, but we're doing another, they will call us out on it.
Yeah.
They will. And they will end up doing the thing that we don't want them to do, because that's what they've watched us do.
Well, and you know about mirror neurons, right?
No.
Mirror neurons,
Tell me about them.
Scientists discovered, those are the neurons that we have, that when you are feeding a baby and you want them to open their mouth, you go like that, because they're watching us. And
mirror neurons, yes.
They'll open their mouth and then you put the applesauce right in, right?
Yes.
So we learn by mirror neurons.
Yes.
So if you want to become a better tennis player and you start watching videos of professional tennis players, you will start becoming a better tennis player when you hit the court. That's what virtual reality is also about.
Yes.
So we have this hardwired in our brains. So we're constantly watching what's going on around us, and we're mirroring those aspects. And
what that is.
And it's important. So I I consciously pay attention. If I want to make a change in my life, I ask myself, who do I know out there in my personal life or professionally or globally who has already done that or has become that, and what do they do to get there?
Right.
And then I start learning, turning on those mirror neurons, not consciously, but
that's how we learn.
We're wired for that.
Yes.
So why not use it?
Right?
It's not only good for applesauce.
Exactly. It's good for whatever you need it for. You know, and in this conversation, what also came up that I'm curious your thoughts on, and this is probably a sensitive topic for some people, but I'm finding as my 7-year-old is in school, who comes home and says, somebody told me I have skinny muscles, and I want bigger muscles, Mom, because they said I had skinny muscles. In this world of conscious parenting, in this world of bullying, in this world of, as many of you may have gone through in the 70s and the 80s, kids were unreal mean. I mean, I can't even, if my child ever went through half the stuff that I had to put up with from friends, it wouldn't be good.
Right.
And so how in this world, and I know we've, bullying and all that, but really you've got these little people coming up and they come home and sometimes my jaw falls to the ground because I think to myself, why should my 7-year-old even worry about skinny muscles when the kid who probably asked him also has skinny muscles?
Right.
That these children at the age of 6 and 7 are already worried about body image.
Right.
My son also displayed, he had a towel, he was swimming this weekend and he had to flip the towel over on the other side because there were mermaids, and at some point somebody made fun of the mermaids. Why at 7 are you even worrying about these things? But so in the realm of conscious parenting, how do you support your children when they're coming home having to deal with, unfortunately, a normal part of growing up, a normal part of life? How do you combat that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have an easy answer. A couple of things. As a parent, you still have to set healthy boundaries. There have been a couple of incidences where I've had to go to the school and talk to them and say, okay, this is what happened. And thankfully, my kids are at a school where the school responded appropriately and very well, and I was very pleased with what they did. And for my son to see me take those actions was important as well, for him to understand that I had his back and that you can take a physical action to remedy a situation in this physical world. That is an important element. But also talking to both of my kids, from an early age, and telling them, look, this is what people find important in this world, and age appropriate. But I would revisit this conversation with them every year and say, at age appropriate conversation, this is how some people think in this world. And you can choose to think that way, or you can choose to think differently. And there will be interactions that you may not like, and you have the power to decide how you internalize it or not. And I'm giving you adult words, but I used kid words to that. And then also, like I was saying earlier, when something would happen, we would have a conversation about it, and I would do a technique with them on it to help, so that program didn't get instilled there long term, to the best of my ability.
Yeah, which is awesome.
So it's a multifaceted approach, and it's not perfect.
Right.
But I do think because kids' minds, subconscious minds, are so open when they're little, and everything just gets programmed right into them before their analytical mind starts getting developed when they're a little older. It was important for me to try to catch incidences like that and talk them through or walk them through simple techniques so that to the most that I could, they didn't get programmed in.
And that's awesome. One of the things that I have used, one of the tools, is always bringing it back to love. Really trying to also, because there are some amazing tools out there that, by tapping is one great one that children can learn, and we can, down in the description, we can share some links with you so that we can provide you some tools that you could actually go look at for yourself. But I also, in an explanation, always try to bring it back to love. I always try to bring it back to this person is hurting inside. They're hurting inside. I try to use examples of when my son was hurting inside and what did he want to say, and always bringing it back to love, because at the end of the day, I don't think anybody wants to be mean, but it is so programmed through media, cartoons, households, parents, unfortunately. You know, stuff gets said and then it gets transferred over. And I think, you know, one of the key things is always bringing it back to love.
Yeah.
And, you know, because innately we don't want to hurt each other. You know, but I do find that a tough one. I find that a tough one because I always think in this day and age, it just shouldn't be happening. And when he comes home, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe that was said.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And, you know, but what are you going to do? Because we're still people. We're still human.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, but I love what you said about that. And I will talk with my kids about that, about, okay, from their perspective, why might they have done it? And we'll talk that through. And I'll help them realize that you have to be in a lot of pain to do or say what you did or said.
Yes.
And then understand how the action may not be okay, but that as a human being, you can understand that they're suffering and in pain.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, that's what it always is. We're hurting on some level. We want some form of attention. We want some form of acknowledgement. We want to be seen.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually that's one of the things that has been very interesting with my kids is that from a very young age, I've always said to them, I love you. And then they usually say, I love you back. And I'll say, do you know why I love you? And when they were younger, they would say, no, why? And I said, because you exist. And I said, for no other reason. I love you because you exist, because you're here.
So huge.
And so they knew that it wasn't to do anything with what they did or what they said or how they looked, but simply by the fact that they exist.
Right.
And I would tell them that. I said, you can do things that I disagree with, but I'm just in love with you because you're here. And that, you know, that sense, I feel like that sense of grounded and safetyness that they get from
I love that. I love that because you exist. I love that because I took a really fascinating course through Landmark Education called the Partnership Course. It was a year-long course with people all around the world. We would meet, you know, 5 weekends out of the year. But one of the basis and distinctions in that course was about realizing that the only reason why we do anything, say anything, is because we want the other person to know we exist. It's the only reason why we do anything is because notice me, I'm here, notice me. It's just because you exist and you want people to know you exist. So I love, you know, bringing it back to your children. I love you simply because you exist. And for a child to grow up thinking that I don't have to prove anything for your love, you love me just because I exist, is huge. Because we spend most of our lives trying to let people know we exist and proving for some form of acknowledgement and love. But so that's powerful. Your kids are going to have a whole new realm on that. Because honestly, that's what the voice is for. Let you know I exist. Just I'm here. So it's powerful. I love it.
Yeah, me too.
So okay. Anyhow, so thank you so much for stopping by and taking a look at this interview. And thank you, Krista.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank
This was
you
fun.
for taking the time to talk about parenting. And, you know, her and I have had so many conversations about our kids and conscious parenting, and we've talked about even doing some stuff together because it's an amazing topic. And today we have a whole new structure of kiddos coming about, and it really does take a new type of parenting. It isn't about what we learned. It isn't about what was modeled to us. It really is about allowing ourselves to open our hearts, to be more present with these children, and to really allow them to be who they are. So I hope you enjoyed this interview today. Thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you, Krista. Thank you so much for taking the time to go over all of this with us. And I'm also going to put a link to her website down below. As I mentioned, she's a hypnotherapist. She works on reprogramming. You're doing some programs right now with couples, but you're also working with children, are you not?
I do work with teenagers.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, if you want to look and explore that more with her, I'm going to put a link down in the description box of how to find Krista, because the work that she does is incredible. And she's also a Reiki master. You do NLP, tapping. She does a little bit of everything. So if there are things that you want to explore, I definitely encourage you to reach out to her. And then I also might put some links to I will be putting some links down below for the NLP, the tapping, but also some books that we'd like to refer you to as well. So wishing you all the most amazing day. Thank you so much for stopping by. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share. And we'll take care, or you take care, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.